Hello, welcome to Search with Sean, and this is another Chat with Sean episode. And if you want to catch him, you can go and check out the playlist on YouTube and also on Spotify. I was going to say because they're all on there as well. So if you want to listen on the go, then go there as well. So yeah, as usual, we'll go some admin stuff, and then we go on to our great guest and go through over some great topics as well around SEO. So yeah, generally, I've said this in a few of the last videos, but I've got a survey going on. Um, basically just trying to get the thoughts of you SEOs on what's going on, what you've changed, what your strategies are, what you think the future's going to hold for SEO and digital marketing. And yeah, you'll find it on my LinkedIn. Just go to Sean Barber and you'll see all the links there. And I'll put a link in the description as well. But generally, I'm going to make a video from it and a blog and just show the some of the results from some of the top experts out there and all the different SEOs working in the industry. And also, I'm giving away three £20 Amazon vouchers to say thank you. That'll be picked randomly. So, you could be in the draw for that. But yeah, I think it's going to be some really great answers so far. So I think you'll find it quite insightful. And then, yeah, last Chat with Sean video, I had Lois Never one, where we talked about everything kind of freelance copywriting and what the future may hold for copywriting, how they're kind of working with or working against AI, and also what future may hold for freelancing generally, because, it's a very interesting time that we work in. And also, I'm going to be putting out another news episode. I'm really excited about. As we know, like SEO, digital marketing, AI, it's developing so quickly. So the stories are really intriguing. And there's going to be a lot more video content on there. And also, I'm planning to stream it live across YouTube and LinkedIn, just so you could pick it up there as well. So if you miss it on the YouTube channel, 'cause sometimes the algorithm doesn't show it to you, you'll be able to see it on LinkedIn as well. I'm not sure on the day yet, but you'll see it if you follow me on LinkedIn. So yeah, I'll stop going on and we'll go on to our great guest and do an intro. So Jamie D'Alessandro is our great guest today. And Jamie is an associate SEO strategist at AMSIF Digital, a performance-driven digital marketing agency. Before joining AMSIF, she held a range of in-house roles, evolving from generalist marketing positions to a more specialist content and SEO focused role. And you may have seen her already on Search with Sean Live, and I'll put a link to in the description about her great video there. So yeah, hello Jamie, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Sean. No, that was a great intro. I am so happy to be back. Yeah, highly recommend the Search with Sean videos. They're fantastic. They're great resources. And humble brag, mine is on there. So definitely worth checking out. Yeah, I'm excited to chat. There's so much going on, I think, just in SEO, and I'm excited to get into it. Started to get into these topics.
No, thank you, and thanks for the shout. You've always been a great support of the channel, so I appreciate that. So yeah, we've got so many great topics to go, but obviously we'll try build out a bit of a picture first. So if you could just tell me kind of your path into SEO and kind of more about your role at AMSIF and what involves, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So it's funny. I originally taking it back, I originally wanted to go to school for fashion design. For some reason, I had it in my mind. I'm like, I want to go to school for fashion. I want to go to school for like either design, merchandising, whatever. And I lived in South Jersey, in the States. So fashion really wasn't the thing, and colleges are expensive. And so I said to myself, all right, well, I'll go to school for marketing because if I can't go to school for design, I'll know how to like market my own designs one day. And spoiler alert, I have not designed anything. I'm not talented. So marketing was very serendipitous. But I went to school for marketing. And when I was in school, I really took up a lot of internships and they kind of varied, but I primarily would be like a marketing assistant, kind of generalist, and you kind of just learn the nuances of how small businesses just market or a lack thereof. And I did that for a couple of years and really just as I got out of school and progressed, So I had a lot of more general marketing roles. And then I had held a kind of more digital focused role at one point that was more focused on like updating blog content and coming up with blog topics. And that was kind of my like intro to digital marketing specifically. And then from there, I got a job as like a content associate and more of the online, marketing, website updates, SEO. And then all of those jobs I held as in-house roles. And AMSIF is the first agency I've been at. And it's been really nice to kind of be on the other side. So I think in marketing, it's either are you in-house or are you an agency? And having held both, I think there's, pros and cons to both. But at an agency, you get to just work with so many different clients at one time and at so many different stages of their business so that you're able to kind of flex different skills and, you really get to get creative with your strategies and plans with them. And specifically at AMSIV, we work with all kinds of types of companies. We've worked with, healthcare. I work with a lot of e-commerce. We work with publishers, really anyone who needs SEO support. But specifically, we try to help clients from an omni-channel perspective. So, if I have a client who is coming to us for SEO, we'll also look to say like, all right, where does SEO fit in your marketing plan? Do you also need another channel to support you? So we really appreciate clients who are collaborative in that and help us better understand how we can help them. So it's been really nice. Yeah. Getting to work with all these different clients and getting to, experience all their different business woes and whatnot. And I'm going on 4 years there in August. So I'm racking up my strength, if you will. Yeah.
No, awesome. And your main role is around, I presume, building sort of the strategies and that
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
that's the main focus of it. That's great. I'm just getting some context, then we could get in right into the topic. So yeah, that's great. And yeah, thanks. So yeah, what's the biggest change in SEO strategy over the past year that
Yeah.
people may not have adapted, but you might just want to focus from e-commerce or a level, but what are kind of like some of the trends that you've seen yourself?
Yeah. And it's been interesting. So since I've really been in SEO and yeah, I even been in AMSIV, right? Everybody always likes to run to the new shiny thing. And excuse me. I always tell my clients that focus on what actually matters. And so for me, I really focus on the core foundation of their website. How do we actually make sure you're following best practices? How do we make sure that, you're actually fixing what's broken? I'll have clients who are like, they'll ask about, oh, I want to, be optimized for AI overviews or SGE. And I'm like, that's great, but you have a ton of broken links on your site. Your conversion path is a little wonky. So I try to focus my clients on like what actually matters. And when it comes to general SEO strategy, I really just focused on the basics, focused on the foundation. I really adopted this approach of like less is more. So instead of filling our roadmaps with just a bunch of things to do, I really focus on one or two things a month that are impactful and are meaningful and can really help move the needle. And that's also helped with just helping clients just better get a sense of what's going on and us being able to better track results. Because you're not chasing down a bunch of little things happening at once. And for my e-commerce clients in particular, one thing I have front loaded more than I have in the past is merchant center audits. So merchant center has become this, despite all of our work on it, it's still very much a black box. A lot of people don't know even some of the brightest minds are just still like, what is going on with Merchant Center? But I've really been front loading that because it's very easy for Merchant Center just to fall to. I've seen it where different teams will own it. It's not necessarily owned by the SEO team. Somebody in paid could own it. Some random person can own it. So nobody's really thinking about it outside of just setting it up and getting it live and working. And so I've really been front loading Merchant Center for my clients because more and more we know that Google is using that information in various parts of the Google ecosystem and shopping and YouTube. Any Google owned channel is basically a qualifier for Merchant Center data, whether it's free or paid. And I've really been making sure that our clients are set up, they have things, set up appropriately, correctly, and just working through those nuances. And even if you're working with those clients, it's still the black box. We're still learning what works and what doesn't, but really front loading our PDP audits and our Merchant Center audits. Those have been kind of the forefront for our e-commerce folks, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw you too many curveballs, but in the last few days, it seems that with the Google Merchant Center that there's news come out that they're going to be using that a lot more to scrape information about certain companies. Is that what have I heard that correctly? Or
Yeah, I think I could also be wrong too, because like sometimes I am like a little behind on the news, but I think it's the brand profiles. They're using it to like, I think, scrape together brand profiles, which I think is different from the shopping knowledge. I'm not 100% sure, but I trust you more than I trust me. But yes, that just goes to show they're constantly updating what they're using their data for. And why I tell my clients, like, get your data in, get it right, and get it correct. Because if you have a chance to control your data, let's do that. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, caveat and all that because we don't know, but I'm sure I'll cover that on the news. So, but I'll correct it there if I need to. But there is definitely a lot more going on with the Merchant Center data
Yeah,
stream, so
a lot.
that's for sure. And like I said, with Lois Neville that was on recently, with the whole, shall we optimize for AI overviews and large language models? I
Mhm.
think at the end of the day, if you're doing the right stuff, like you're writing content in the
Yeah,
right way, and for the user, for the human user, that's kind of where they're trying to get to. So at the end
exactly.
of the day, if you're doing that, continue doing it. If you've been writing for search engines, then you'll need to change your game. But otherwise, continue writing for people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are other things coming, but um, uh, so yeah, how are you navigating client expectations when organic visibility becomes harder to track with, like, obviously, like with things like
Mhm.
large language models and AI
Mhm.
overviews?
So this is something that I have been struggling with a little bit because I think when you're in this industry, you can get very overwhelmed with the fact that there's like the shiny new thing that everybody's chasing. And every topic right now is optimizing for language learning models and AI and SG. And I've always told my clients, I'm like, yes, we're aware that these things are happening, but don't lose sight of what's important. You know, language learning model optimization and AI, none of that matters if your website and the foundation for, your brand, your business is broken. Because I essentially look at AI overviews and SGE. I just look at them as like information regurgitators. They're just going to show you what information's out there. So, like you were saying, if you're doing everything correctly, they're good. It's going to show through in AI overviews and SGE. And for me, I tend to focus on the really specific kind of conversion points. With e-commerce, it's easier because it's like, hey, did somebody come to the site and did they buy? And it's like, okay, great. But with our, publisher and our content clients, It is nice when you see them pulled in for, SGE. And again, it goes back to, hey, like if you're doing what you need to do, you will kind of be rewarded for that in these AI outputs and whatnot. But for me, I'm still focusing on, you know, getting the foundation right, getting the content right, really making it worthwhile content. And if we are seeing traffic kind of dip a little bit in terms of clicks, because it might be going to SGE, they kind of just set that expectation of like, hey, it's kind of the nature of the landscape right now. And it creates a conversation for us to talk about other ways in which we're driving traffic to somebody's site. And so it kind of goes back to that omni-channel approach of, yes, Google and organic search is a really important channel for us. But what are the other ways we're connecting with our audience? Maybe it's something as publishing on YouTube or coming up with like a YouTube strategy, just a way to kind of differentiate it. Um, Tapping into social media, right? So it's all that to say, I work with my clients to let them know we know it's happening. We know it's going on. We know that there's potential implications on traffic as a result, but don't let that lose sight of what's important. Let's focus on what matters. Focus on building a great website. Excuse me. Focus on creating great content, all of that. And then SGE and AI will follow. And it's funny, the other day I was in a meeting with a client and they were asking me about, the different chat bots. And I just pulled a report for them for referral traffic. And ChatGPT was actually a referral source for them that led to, I think like it led to like $50 worth of revenue for them because they're in an e-commerce space. So assumably somebody might have searched like, oh, what is the best XYZ or whatever. And so you're kind of seeing this double-edged sword of like, there are frenemies sometimes because people just want answers instantly. Admittedly, I use Chat GPT and other tools to just get answers so I don't feel like sifting through Google for it. But Chat GPT is to some extent using information from Google and these other databases to pull that information in. So getting it right there still really matters. And Sean, this is something I learned recently. Perplexity. Have you used Perplexity a lot? I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just started using Perplexity a little bit more. And I actually just sent an email to a client about this. They're doing the merchant program, or
Mm.
they're allowing merchants to like sign up or whatever. And I remember I sent that to my client and I'm like, another reason why we want to own our data because of Perplexity is letting us submit product information, specs, all of that gives us a better chance to show up the way we want to when people search. And as a shopping girly, I was like, I need to use Perplexity more for shopping because I am missing out. But it just goes to show how we can't escape these AI tools. And so again, just focusing on just building your brand, building a solid website, having the right content, it will come through in those tools. But I tell my clients not to focus on that directly. It's everything else will have an indirect benefit for it. So
Yeah, no, 100%. And, that I've seen that with ChatGPT. So example was I was looking to go to a restaurant on Friday, Italian. So I was looking at nice Italian restaurants, not too high in budget, but not too low. And also had nice cocktail bars nearby that we could go to prior to going for the meal. And what's really good with ChatGPT is you can get quite specific in your
yeah,
in your search, and like Google, you won't get the same sort of answers. So what we're finding, like, one, it gave really good answers, and then you can build onto that saying, "Can you show me the images?
yeah,
Can you show me reviews?" And that's where that
exactly.
builds
Yeah,
into it, because you need that, it's images to be found on search. You need the reviews, you need all the social media, all that stuff builds into that profile. And then also, like, what's really cool is that, what I've said a few times on the channel is around ChatGPT is like, we're getting a lot more pages now being shown that were really hidden on Google
Yeah.
previously. And they're
Oh,
being shown and getting traffic via the large language models. And I know Google still got a huge amount
mhm.
market share,
Yeah.
but they said themselves, like, in the last few days and that they're going to be like going away from the usual traditional search bar. And then also obviously, like in beta, they've got the AI mode. So
Mhm.
they're going to be transforming into that sort of
Yeah.
conversational stuff. So, you still need to, like we said before, those old school sort of
Yeah.
techniques, still, writing the content for a human, getting
Yeah.
to the point, um, cut up the fluff, yeah, omni-channel, including imagery, video, blah, blah. So yeah, that's interesting. And in terms of, like, as you said about client expectations, and what metrics are you tracking now that may not have been a priority like a couple of years ago, for example? How has that changed?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I've really started incorporating time on page metrics more than I have before, and average engagement, time, basically anything related to how long people are spending on the website. Um, Click-through rate has always been, I think, a core metric. I've always tracked that, but I'm leaning into it much more. So when I'm reporting to clients, I'm not just saying, oh, your clicks went up or your impressions went up. I'm really looking at that click theory. When you are showing up, are people clicking for you? And I'm using the, time on site engagement metrics to kind of better understand, are people getting what they need? I'm trying to get more detailed with my reports where building out those metrics for specific sections of the site. So are people spending longer on, content versus, if it's a e-commerce site on PDPs versus PLPs, just trying to understand that on-site behavior more because I think, and admittedly as an SEO, you're so focused on just like, okay, traffic, like, are you getting it? But then maybe not spending enough time on, okay, you did get traffic, but what's happening on the site when you get and more recently, building out reports that look at referral sources. So I want to be able to see, are my clients getting traffic from ChatGPT, Perplexity, all of these different things. And having shown my clients the referral report where ChatGPT was a source was really like an aha moment. And I think even my client was like, oh, wow, like it's kind of our frenemy in this instance. So really the on-site engagement metrics have been really the newer addition for me, looking at referral sources, especially fielding AI, but also looking to see like who is a referral source for my site in general. Um, but an oldie but goodie, the click-through rate, just really using that more as my key driver of how people are interacting with my site. And that's also how I'm able to kind of see like, okay, if my click-through rate's going down, what is the reason for that? Is it because I'm getting more, zero search clicks happening? Am I showing up more in AI? People just aren't clicking. What's happening there? And then also we talk a lot about brand too with our clients. And I'll give you an example. I have a client who they their competitors are they're more in like a commodity space. So things you can get on Amazon, but also Walmart. And relative to some of these other competitors that they compete with in search, they might not be as well known as a brand. And so I tend to lean in on click through rate for them as an indicator of how successful they are in search because they'll rank and get impressions for some like high volume keywords, but their click through rate will be sometimes abysmal, sometimes very low. And to me, this creates a conversation of you're hitting the basics, you're getting that right. how can we do more? But also let's kind of face the music of if someone's searching and you come up and then all of these other big names come up, who do we think they're going to click? They're going to click a listing of someone they know. People know Amazon, people know Walmart. If you show up and somebody's not familiar with your brand, they're going to click with who they're more familiar with. And so then it creates a conversation of how are we supporting our brand for these types of keywords? So click-through rate has really been the game changer for me. And the on-site metrics too just support that of like, well, when people are coming to your site, how long are they staying and what are they doing? So constantly refining it. And that's the best part about reporting is just finding different things that we can measure for our clients that help them. And I'll also ask my clients too, like, what do you need me to pull in, as they're having conversations with stakeholders. So it changes, but those have been the kind of core ones that have been different for me over the last year.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the referral one's really interesting because, especially if you look at your competitors' referral traffic, because if you see that they're
Mhm.
bringing in traffic via, it's given me some really good outreach pieces, piece of content we could create maybe that would get, backlinks to get that sort of coverage and referral traffic and things like that. So that's always a good one.
Yeah.
And also I'm thinking, looking at, if you use Hrefs, you can look at what are the top pages for your
Yeah.
competitors and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. That is also like a really cool tool to look at what pages are bringing them traffic, what pages are bringing them like potential revenue and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Is a good one. And I just on that because it's a contentious sort of topic because time on page and things. Because the thing is that Google and obviously large language models, their aim is to get the answer to the person as quick as
Yeah.
they can. So ideally, they want them to spend the least amount of time on a page as possible to get that answer.
Yeah.
um, and as we know, like Google, they push you on certain queries, they push you directly to the answer on the page. So that will have effect on that data set as well,
Uh,
wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also will say I take it with a grain of salt. I consider it directional because what I'm looking to see is like, are people spending time on the site like at all? And towards your point, yeah, especially on my e-commerce sites, I'll notice that the time on site is not generally too long, especially for my smaller e-commerce sites. People, I'm assuming, go there, buy what they need, and they leave. So it's all kind of relative to the customers. It's all relative to my client's business. So
Mm.
for my e-commerce sites, if it's a little bit shorter or it's kind of just, less than a minute, I'm not wholly concerned if I'm seeing transactions and revenue perform the way they need to. On my larger e-commerce sites, it can be nuanced because it depends on how somebody's searching. If they're clicking through filters and trying to find what they need, if they're using the search bar. So it kind of gives me a sense of like what that experience is. And whenever you have enterprise e-commerce sites, it's very nuanced and messy on how people search. And even on my content heavy sites, I tend to assume a little bit of a higher on-site rate because if their predominant strategy is content, I do want to see people on there reading it or clicking through. And so with that, I'll also look at events in GA4 to see like, okay, are people, clicking through to an article? Are they clicking through to a white paper? Some content will have specific tracking to see like, all right, are they clicking through to like these downloadable resources? So it's definitely directional and it's relative to my client themselves. And that's also why I want to get more granular and like that time on site per section of site too, because I have e-commerce sites with blogs. I want to better understand how people are reading those blogs. Like, are they reading? Are they jumping to purchase? Are they just jumping off? So even within the site itself, depending on what kind of site sections you have and how robust those are, it can create a different experience entirely. So in a world where we want answers so quick, it's kind of tough because I'm like, well, when you do get that answer and you're on the site, what are you doing with it? So it's definitely a work in progress, and it's a lot. It's a lot of information, but I do think it helps kind of create more conversations with clients, which sometimes it's just hard too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's all in relation to what the piece of content is, what the page is about, the intent behind the page,
Yeah.
what the purpose of the page is. Because, like you say, sometimes you want them to click through to something. That's the whole purpose of that page, or to buy something. However, sometimes them bouncing around along the site could be a bad thing. So, that's that's the danger when people look at data and they don't understand these nuances, as you say, because some people in marketing may think them going to loads of different pages on one session is a good thing, but it may be a really bad thing because they're not getting what they need, and that's
Exactly.
obviously so it's all in context, I guess, and yeah, if you're e-commerce and you're getting loads of visits and no one's buying anything, then obviously
Mhm.
that's a bad thing. Um, but yeah, it's quality over quantity.
I'm
Um,
I'm surprised we don't have headaches more from all the data we have to just consume on a daily basis and just the nuance we have to go through. Like,
well, I think the thing is now it's even more tricky because it used to be a lot easier, didn't it? In terms of putting one kind of keyword to one page to one user journey, it was a lot easier to put together. Now everything's a bit more kind of molded together and yeah, kind of more fluid in the way that people search and the way
oh,
that queries are together. And
oh my
it's interesting. It keeps us on our toes, and that's the main thing.
God.
Um,
Never bored. That's for sure.
So yeah, are you seeing success with things like information gain and topical depth, and how do you approach that?
Yeah. So something that we have really been, not even just on my team, but at our greater SEO team, we've really been big proponents, like I said, of doing what's right from the jump. And something we've seen, and Lily Ray is our VP of research. So she's always showing us kind of what's going on in the industry and different kind of things to think about. And with the whole, like, HubSpot's a good example. Like when HubSpot saw their traffic go down and it was like, oh my, and I think a lot of SEOs were like, yeah, kind of not surprised. Some of the things that they ranked for were wholly out of their topical authority. And this is a conversation I have with clients a lot about topical authority. Really focus on what you do best. It's not a game of, you know, quantity, just how many pieces of content you can get out. I think back in the day, and I remember coming up as an SEO and you're learning like SEO best practices, the idea of like query deserves freshness. So people I think would take that and run with it. Like, okay, I gotta constantly create new content, post things out, like this idea of like shoulder niche content where it's like kind of related to your core topic, but like not really. Excuse me. It was a very big thing that happened when I was like coming up in SEO. And I think more and more we're seeing, and even Google says it, they're like, write what you know and write for your user. Please stop writing all of this other junk. And I think Google's getting to the point where they know SEOs do this. And they're like, we don't want to crawl it. Please don't waste our time. Don't make it. Don't produce it. And so with my clients, we really focus on what are you known for? And so when we work on a content, so for example, I have a client who works in the training space. And for us, when we produce content for them, we work backwards from their business offering. So if they are producing trainings in, um, like communication or like project management training, they're providing it as a product to people. They're saying like, hey, we have tons of training on this, please buy it. And so we use our content to support that. And so I really try to keep my content strategies aligned with what the business goal is, because it doesn't help my client if we're writing about just random kind of semi-related things. It just becomes noise. And what I've also done with this same client was, back in the day, they kind of had some of this happening on their site where it was like semi-related, or they took excerpts from training manuals and it was either thin content or just, it wasn't doing great. And I had put together a slide for them that said, like, here's the total amount of articles you have on your site. Here's the percentage that underperform. Here's the percentage that has potential. And here's the percentage that actually does well. Out of maybe approximately like 1,500 articles, 70% were underperforming, where they had less than like 50 clicks, 50 sessions in like 6 months and even longer. And so creating that visual allowed them to see like, oh, we need to focus on what actually moves the needle. And we've had some really great success dialing it back and focusing on topics that are like directly relevant to their business, and where we can, really thoughtfully link to other like white papers or courses, whatever. So all that to say, for us, really focusing on the business's like topical authority, that's always going to be your best, because there's this churn and burn that's not working anymore. Quite frankly, because people aren't reading it. Google doesn't want to crawl it. They're like, they have all these crawling constraints they want to put on it because they don't want to waste the budget, admittedly so. And really, you're kind of wasting resources too as a business. Again, it goes back to like less is more. If you spend the time and money on like one or two really good pieces, that's what's going to have more value for you. And with this same client, we worked with them to give them new brief ideas. And we had sent over different briefs related to, again, products that they sell on their site categories. And one of the articles that they put out was actually an interview with someone who works in that space. So it was an article related to like using emotional intelligence in the workplace. And instead of them just, going through and following, the outline we put together based on, obviously how we want them to compete, but just ways to think about, how can you put your spin on this? So they went ahead and they actually interviewed somebody who works in, I believe, like leadership training, who also specializes in emotional intelligence training. And it's really great because you're getting some really fresh answers, not just kind of, you know, generic things. And sometimes that kind of content is totally okay. But if you have an opportunity to interview a thought leader or a subject matter expert, do that. That's fantastic. And that's the kind of new content that your AI tools and LLMs and HDE, all of these people are going to pull in, and it gives a new perspective. And so I really love that they kind of found that avenue for themselves. But it all comes down to, we want you to write about this because you have the perceived thought leadership on it and you are interviewing thought leaders for it. So in the age of where we are, churn and burn is like not it anymore. We cannot do that. But really working with clients to focus on like, what are you really good at? Write about that. And I'll also say, I really welcome when my clients tell me that they have like customer service teams or someone who's responsible for either like just another department within their company who kind of handles more maybe questions or um gets really close to customers and their needs at once, and being able to talk to those teams and saying, what are your clients asking, or like, what are your customers asking? Us being able to reproduce content from that is super helpful. And so just finding new ways to just speak to your audience. That's really what it's all about. And yeah, gone are the days where generic doesn't work anymore. Like it might for some people, but really going above and beyond from the jump, I think that's going to have so many long-term benefits than just kind of doing a lukewarm piece of content now. So that's kind of what we've seen.
No, that's an amazing answer. And, I think customer service is so underrated, like you say, because if
Yeah.
someone's asking it, it's usually a case of more people want to know it. They just haven't asked it, so that, all those search volumes and all that is a bit deceiving at times because, there's upcoming things that may not be covered in those tools. And I always think of it as like a bit like a shop. Like if you had a shop and you had loads of items and
Yeah.
you kept stocking the same things, but no one's buying a whole bunch of them. You don't keep stocking them and putting your time and effort into maintaining it. Do you just bin them and then you start concentrating on the ones that are
Yep.
bringing in the customers? So, I did an analysis myself on Hrefs where they give you information about how many of the pages are bringing in the traffic and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. And it's amazing. I did a whole thing about 77 different companies in our industry. And it's amazing how many
Mhm.
websites rely on just a handful of pages to bring
Yeah.
in the majority of their traffic. And the other ones are just like literally doing nothing. So yeah, it's something to look at if you have a large website and you're creating loads of content because you don't, like you say, waste time on that. You might as well focus on those money makers or those
Yeah.
traffic, ones that have got a lot of potential. And also, what you said around, information gain. One thing we can take learnings from is digital PR or PR
Yeah.
generally. Like,
Yeah.
because you're only going to get picked up by journalists if you offer them something unique, something with data behind it, something with a unique angle, something that isn't being done by everyone else because they get tons of press
Yeah.
releases every day. So just think of it like that. If your piece of content is literally just something someone could spin out with AI, then the chances are it's not going to be
Exactly.
picked up. So, um,
Nailed it. Totally nailed it. Like music to my ears. Like this is a big conversation point too with our clients, and why we hone this of don't just do what you've been doing or just doing another generic article. Just take the extra time. And I get it. Like time is super limited for a lot of businesses. Money is a, scarce resource. And it's not always easy for people to get connected with subject matter experts or doing something different. But that's part of our job where it's like to challenge them and saying, hey, if you really want to compete, this is what you got to do. And I think what you brought up about Ahrefs is like such a good point. So many websites and like it's bringing me back. Like when you're doing your reporting and you're showing them, like you only have like a couple pages that actually drive traffic to your site. It both fascinates me and scares me because if something happens to any of those pages, your traffic just tanks and you're like, what happened? And it's funny you mentioned that. I had a former client where part of their business model, they were e-commerce, but part of their business model was education. And they were kind of known for their education content. And it did really well. And they put a lot of thought into it. They had people on staff who could help validate content. So they did put effort into it. And there was this one article that historically drove like, it was historically a top 5 driver for them for years. And we were working with them and just month over month, it would start to drop, start to drop. And then you would see year over year, it was like these huge losses in traffic. And this article too was also an incremental driver in revenue. So they didn't just feel it on the traffic side, but also on the revenue side. And when we did the sort of analysis of like, okay, like who's winning, like who's taking this away? what worked before, which was this like really long, robust article, was now being beat out by, similar brands in the space who also develop their own topical authority, half the size. It was half the size. And it kind of becomes contradictory, especially if you've been in SEO for a while. It was always, write more information, really demonstrate your skills, which to some extent I still do believe in, but it's also, does that still work in the age of AI? Because with this article, it was kind of like a what is and how it works. Well, I don't need to read this long article now. I can just go to AI, go to ChatGPT, what is it, how does it work, and have my own conversation. And then if you are using Google, the competing articles were much shorter and they had a much friendlier interface. Whereas my former client's article was just this long piece of content with like kind of some jump links, but it wasn't the most maybe like UX friendly. This competitor article that I featured had just like intro copy, what it was, and then they had like FAQ boxes you can just click. So it was a little more interactive. And so that kind of, I remember like going through the whole process with them. Like, wow, yeah, it kind of highlights the importance of what worked before doesn't always work now. And it could also be where maybe there's another contender who is impeding on your market share for this term. So keeps you on your toes. But I think that is such just an easy win, just using that report. Honestly, I'm in reporting mode for my clients. I'm going to bring that back up because that is such a good report too.
And not only that, with the blog side of it, well, it's everything, but freshness is obviously such a
Mhm.
key thing now. Like
Yeah.
you can, especially in large language models, if you're got the most piece of freshest content on a topic,
Yeah.
you're probably going to be more likely to be shown. So, I see the more content you have, the more blogs you churn out, the more content you churn out that isn't really bringing much value. It makes it a lot harder to keep everything fresh, So again, like I bring it back to a shop. If you have loads of stuff, it's going to be hard to
Exactly.
keep everything
Yeah.
in stock and fresh. So if, you know, s- you could probably be bringing in a lot of traffic through a certain piece of content, but then other people, as you say, make better, more fresh versions of that, and you start getting outranked and out seen and yeah. So I think it works in that, and also I've seen with blogs that people are bringing in traffic via blogs or other pages,
Yeah.
but they don't then discover that, or they don't act upon it. So if you are bringing in traffic via like a page that's quite far down in the depth, or there's a blog, or then do something about it, improve internal linking,
Right. Yeah.
call to actions, make them do something when they're there. There's no point in bringing traffic for the sake of it. They're not using it. Um, so yeah, I thought that was interesting. And also the homepage, obviously the majority of homepages are the ones that bring in the most amount of traffic, and people don't seem to like optimize them or use them to their full potential. And they're usually the biggest,
Yeah.
most page on the site. So
Nailed it. It's like we must be like kindred SEO spirits. I feel the same thing happening. And you nailed it. So many of my clients will talk about how, oh, like this section of my site's really important, or I have this new piece of content I want to promote. Use your own page. Like that's what it's there for. Like that's has so much great equity. And just that's why the basics are so important. And earlier, we talked about like for my SEO strategies, I really stick with like the core stuff. Internal linking optimization is always there because we always have clients where the internal link equity is skewed, and we got to check that out, see what's going on. And you'd be surprised the amount of content we find. You're like, is this still important? And they're like, oh yeah, we want to keep that. And I'm like, cool, you should probably link to it because we cannot find it. And it goes back to, when we publish content, obviously we want it to be found in Google. But if somebody did a really great content piece That's a great newsletter. Or that's like a great like social media post. That's, however it is your else the other channels you're using to connect to your customer, use that. I've always encouraged my clients to use email or other methods to showcase their content. And so we the last thing you want to do is just bury good content. Like it's hard to write it to begin with. Don't bury it. Keep it fresh. And
Yeah,
homepage.
so
Probably good.
yeah, no, I understand, and also I feel like people feel they need to keep creating new content, like the social team and the email team. They feel they have to keep building new, fresh
Yeah,
content. You've already probably covered it in previous bits of content, but you're not communicating between. So yes, really interesting
exactly.
and important to do that. And just on that, you do cover a topic. Say here's training, hiking, whatever the topic is. How far away from that could you go without stretching you know,
Yeah.
beyond going over the boundary too much? Like where do you go from that? Because obviously if you did hiking, you could go into health and fitness, you could go into clothing,
Yeah.
you can go to community, you can go into all sorts of areas really.
That is a great question. And admittedly, I think there's also nuance to that. Because, right, on the one hand, you can get into your more general stuff of like, what is this? And, if like hiking is actually a great example. Like, if somebody's looking for like hiking food recommendations and you focus on that, but then your hiking audience also cares about like supplements or something. I think for me, it's one of those things where keeping a queue of different ideas is helpful because you can kind of see, okay, like what are just ideas you're coming up with? And then you could kind of go back and refine to say, I probably don't want to talk about supplements if I'm talking about like hiking. That's probably not connected. For me, it's one of those things where I go back to how do they generate revenue for their business? Is it through leads? Is it through affiliate links? Is it through just pure e-commerce? Focusing on that. So if you don't sell the product on your site, I'm probably not going to encourage you to write it because I don't want you to draw attention to something that doesn't make you money. Now, the affiliate space is a whole nother beast. We could be an affiliate for anything. We've also had to taper down clients a little bit. Not on my team directly, but we've had some SEO clients on other teams where they've been in the affiliate space and they want to just link to everything. And it's like, we gotta like be careful here. But I think it really comes back to, does it truly move the needle for your business? I think it's totally okay to want to like, write content that your customers may care about, but there's a limit to that. You can't write everything your customer might potentially care about. So that's where I think using like Reddit forums and our frenemy, ChatGPT, these are instances where I will go to ChatGPT and kind of give them a sense of like, roughly here's the type of website, here's like the type of customer, what are some interesting topics I could field for them? And I'll kind of get some ideas to kind of play with, and then I'll bring it to either my team or my client and say, like, do any of these kind of resonate? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Um, but yeah, my guardrail for how far we go is, do you sell it? Does this actually make sense? Um, if you don't sell it, probably let's not talk about it. Like on my training client, if they got into, oh gosh, I can't even think of a good example, but if they tried to write about something or pitch to us to say like, hey, let's write about X, Y, and Z topic that's like semi-related, but not, I'd say probably not. Let's focus on what you actually do well. So I'm comfortable putting guardrails for my clients. Sometimes they're like, but why can't we do it all? And it's like, because you can't do it all. I think clients want to be everything to everybody because, you want to make the most money, but it's not possible. You can't be everything to everybody. And so the quicker we acknowledge that we need to stay in our lane, the better everyone becomes. But I don't know. I haven't won that battle yet. I get close. I get my wins when I can, but yeah, it's tough. And I think because we're so inundated with information, it's kind of easy to be like, well, maybe I can read about that because it's like similar enough. And we got to like have that proactiveness to be like, wait, no, I just can't slip myself. I can't read about it. It's not going to wear ahead. So I really just go to, do they sell it? Does it make sense for their business? If not, do not read about it. Do not pay.
That's fair enough. And like you say, it's all around, quality. So,
Mhm.
if you are, there's no point keep creating mediocre pieces of content. If you, there's always something you could do to improve that page, either update the copy, update the assets that are supporting it, like imagery and video, expert insights and stuff. There's usually
Yeah.
always something you could add to it that would improve it. So there's no point keep just, as you say, churning out this just
Yeah.
bits of content on random topics. So, yeah. So last few points. Hopefully, are you okay with time or?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the last few points. So if you had to bin one overused SEO tactic, what would it be? Or it could be a topic or a theme or anything that in the SEO space that you're sick of.
I feel like I've kind of hinted at it, but I think the churn and burn. I am so over the churn and burn for my clients. I think you brought up a good point about going back and like updating content. We talk so much about new content, and I think it's easy just to focus on that because oh, it's new, it's fresh. But content optimizations are half the battle, going back in and updating what you already did. And for me, I think just this abandoning this idea that you have to produce new content all the time. No, you don't. You can do, you can retake what's existing, add a new spin, create new media for it, right? Like, I mean, there's so many tools now that can make images for you. You can do something like really fun that way. But I think for me, just abandoning this idea that you have to just create new in order to win. And we have one client where we work with them and they're kind of in this business of more content than, updating. And we are kind of starting to see like cannibalization happening and, they're competing with themselves because they're writing so much about the same thing in just like very different ways. And I know, like, with my clients, I'm like, listen, we will identify gaps that need to be addressed. That's totally fine. But from there, we're going to focus on updates. And also, this is where I encourage them to get into new mediums. Could you create a YouTube video? It doesn't even have to be like high production. Just get a ring light, get an iPhone, film somebody, and call it a day. Like, the barriers to content aren't as high as I think people think. And I think businesses, rightfully so, they're like, okay, well, if I'm putting out something, it has to have a high degree of polish. Depending on your business, not always. So churn and burn is out. You've heard it here first. We're not doing it anymore. It's done. And really, I mean, it sounds repetitive. I know Google says it, but like there's a reason why they're saying it. Focus on quality over quantity and truly right for your user. And I'll go back to my client who they interviewed a subject matter expert. That's a great piece of content. Like I was engaged reading it because you're getting these like thoughtful answers. You don't know what you're going to get because you're interviewing a person. You're not just, regurgitating what's already on Google. So out is too much content, in is quality, thoughtful, truly unique content that And that I hope doesn't change.
Yeah, it's great points. So yeah, we'll just move on to the last point before I let you go. And so obviously we always got to look towards the future and the future content and content strategy, and obviously with you know AI in the mix in the future. I mean, I'll give you one bold
Yeah, I want to hear it. Let's do
advice.
it.
So, and this is kind of taken off from what Andy Holland said in my recent chat with him, as I do think in near future, well, I say near future, I'm talking like 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
maybe, that websites will be a lot less frequently visited. I think there'll just be information data centers for the large language models to feed from to source the information to the end user, and then most of the conversions will be done via AI agents and on directly on the SERP, or and things
Very
like that. That's what I think is where it's leading to. I think websites will be just literally that data source
yeah.
that these bots feed from, and then we spit out the information. But I could be totally wrong, but I can see that's where it could be going. But yeah, yeah,
Same.
would be I've got to go that into that. But what do you think the future, especially like next year or so, for content? You think it'd just be more desire for human based, content? People getting tired of like the AI focus sort of like just general information.
I know it's a double-edged sword because as SEOs and I think marketers, we're so tired. Me, I can get tired of it because it's just all you hear, all you hear. But as like a consumer, I will go to ChatGPT sometimes. Like I will go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I'm like looking for this kind of thing. What do you recommend?" And with Perplexity, that being more focused on like shopping and whatnot, now I'm like, I have some ideas of outfits I need to put together, and I think Perplexity can help me. And it's kind of crazy, like sitting here, right in like 2025, we're on like this cusp of like what AI can do. And it's kind of like crazy to think that the way that we do our jobs can like wholly change. And I think you're onto something though. The way that people are using ChatGPT and these AI tools is kind of what I think Google wanted people to do and why they have SGE. Like they know that SEOs exist and what they do and how content gets produced. They also know that people don't want to sift through that content. I think that's also why Reddit exploded the way it did, because this idea of, first-hand accounts or quicker accounts of things, people really want that. And sometimes like that's what I want too. For me, I think we are going to see more people using AI tools to get answers. I also think that we're going to see people use AI tools for more complex problem solving that Google on its own probably can't do or like wants to do. So for me, in like my role sometimes, right, like I'll just have like general business process questions or like things related to my job function that I like kind of want help with, but I don't know exactly what I need. And I kind of want to figure out the direction I'm going to go in. I can't type that into Google because I don't even know what to ask, but I'll go to ChatGPT and like say, here's the person I am and my role and like what I'm doing. Like, here's what I'm struggling with. So that more direct one-to-one content, I think we are going to see that, and having like referral source reports to see like where that content's coming from is going to be helpful. It's tough. I kind of view it as a frenemy thing. I would say before AI tools fully take over our websites, you know, using ChatGPT and these tools to kind of help you think through different ways to produce content for these websites, getting new ideas. And again, taking it with a grain of salt, because I'm also a believer in you don't want to outsource creative thinking and critical thinking to AI. Like you still want to be valued for your brain, but I think it's totally okay to like use it to field ideas and then say, all right, well, could I actually do something with this? So I think in the meantime, using it as your frenemy to build better content for your website that ultimately is going to get scraped and be back up on the AI tool. It's kind of this like weird circle of life. But yeah, I think especially for ecom, I am going to be really curious to see how this plays for my ecom clients. So instead of people just searching in Google or being inundated with, I mean, we've seen it, right? Like you're just inundated with just lists and lists of products, ads. I don't want to scale through it. I just almost want you to tell me what to buy. So I'm going to be really curious to see how that kind of shopping behavior changes. And admittedly, like I might give it a roll myself to see if I can get better results on what I'm looking for. But yeah, I think it's going to be this. The two kind of need each other right now. Like I think we need AI tools and the AI tools need us to like generate the content. But at some point, someone's going to be the dominant source. And I think what you were saying about, the AI tools might become like the default. I'm a little scared for that. So I think in the meantime, yeah, using AI to kind of help understand, what new areas you can explore for your website, your content, even on other channels, like other channels you can be doing work on, using that to kind of help you field ideas, using it to help build your brand, like coming up with ideas for that. Um, Using it as a kind of tool in your strategy, using it as much as you can, I think could be really helpful. Um, my God, I never thought I'd see the day where I'd have to consider that like an AI tool would overtake Google. So
Well, I think even Google, themselves are rolling more into AI mode. I think is going to be like the default mode going forward in many ways. I think they're testing it out now, but I think like I said, they recently said that the search bar will probably kind of be like a thing of the past soon. So
wow, which is
you know, so
yeah.
I think that personalization, that kind of AI experience is going to be the way. So, like you say, instead of just sifting through all those results and those e-commerce results, it will be more specific to your personal request and your
Mhm.
personal. So, I think Google knows they have to join in as much as they can before they kind of get more of their share gets taken. And actually, I think the thing is, I must admit, when this was all kicking off, I was quite concerned about SEOs jobs. And I know some will still be affected in digital marketing because of what AI can do in terms of,
Yeah.
you know, technical SEO, coding,
Yeah.
image generation, that kind of thing, video creation. These things will affect jobs. There's no doubt about it. But I do think that if you're like an SEO manager generally and you kind of on that angle, I think in fact it's like really exciting because like Andy said, and like building on what I said, if you are like, you know, in control of that data set is what you're in control of. That's what you
Yeah.
have to optimize. You're in control of all these different bots that are coming to take information from you. So it could be one from TikTok, it could be one from
Mhm.
Meta, it could be Google, um, Bing, whatever. All these different bots are trying to take different bits of data. Your job is to put out the best form of data they can
Yep.
get about your brand, about your service and product. Similar to what we're doing now, but in a different way. So I think it's quite exciting. It means we could be, like you said earlier, we've got to work across all the different channels that could potentially be reached through
Yeah.
organic methods, and also video. Video isn't going anywhere. Video's going to be growing and growing, and audio, So,
Mhm.
like you said, get on Spotify, get on Apple Music,
Yeah.
um, Amazon have their own,
Yeah.
music and stuff. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Few years.
It's like scary, but I think you brought up a good point about how And a philosophy that I've always taken for myself is I'm a digital marketer first and I'm an SEO second. And I think it really just reminds marketers in general, you really want to be well versed in how marketing is used across the board. Like it's great that we go deep into like what area, like you need that. You need a subject matter expert. But don't lose sight of the fact that other things happen outside of your channel. And I feel like that's also a way to maybe help future proof your job too, is like, as this industry is changing, make sure that you also are up to speed on how other channels work and how you can really add value to a business in general. Cause who knows what's going to happen to SEM? It is like a new thing. And I always see the things of like, oh, is SEO dead or are SEO jobs replaceable? And I'm like, I can't think about this right now.
Yeah, just take day by day, and
And
don't
so
worry, you'll be fine.
as long
Uh,
as nights keep breaking, I'll have a job.
so yeah, no, I think we're safe for now, so don't worry about it. But yeah, I'll finish off because I know I've held you for longer than I promised. So
Oh, this
yeah,
is great.
thank you so much, Jamie, for joining me. So I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Seriously, you're doing fantastic work on Search with Sean, YouTube content. It's incredible and it's so refreshing to hear your voice, your perspective, and just getting the chance to chat with you. Like this is great. And I'm rooting for you. This is awesome.
Thank you.